So with this, I conclude the first half of this video. I'm not sure, how many of you already know the stuff that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about some really interesting things right now. I feel like the first half of the video was potentially a little boring to some of you because there's a lot of information that might be redundant if you already kind of see through the bullshit. Also, I'm not sure, how interesting the analogies with the triangle and the triangle system was to you guys. But if you are still watching at this point, I just want to thank you so much for being here, for being on my channel, for watching my videos, because that's the only reason I'm doing it. I do this for you, wherever you are, whoever you are, in the hopes that this gives you something and this can help you mentally prepare for what is about to happen to us as people, as a nation, and on earth in the coming few years. So, this second part, I'm going to go deep. I'm going to go much deeper into the symbolism, much deeper into end time prophecy, and I'm really going to use a lot of revelation here. I can assume you're going to be aware of some of the things, but if not, I'm pretty sure this is going to blow your mind. And some of these things I didn't just get from the internet. Some of these things I have found organically because God leads me to information. The same way God has woken you up to the enemy while everybody still sleeps and gobbles up every agenda and every single lie from the news and the government and everybody, some people wake up. And so, in that same way, God's people are going to know what happens before it does. Now, we might not know the full extent of what is going to happen, but we can have a pretty good idea so that when these fake deceptions, which I'm going to get into, are coming, you will be prepared. And that is also my goal. That is why I'm making this video. I truly believe 100% that if you're still watching at this point, and I know there's going to be very, very few of you because this video was over an hour long at this point, that this message is exactly for you. I'm going to talk about a few different things. It's all going to be tying together with the end times, symbolism of the end times, potential theories, things that could be happening, things that are already happening, and I'm going to tie them all together nicely to give you a full overview and picture so that whatever happens, you will be prepared, you will know this is going to happen, you will not worry, you will not doubt, and you will know what to do. And first of all, I'm going to talk about Cern. So I'm going to tell you now what Cern is, at least from an official perspective or from the scientific perspective. This is what they tell us Cern is. So Cern is a gigantic particle accelerator. Basically, what they want to do is they want to find the origins of the universe. So how they do it is they simulate a Big Bang. So they smash particles together to recreate the Big Bang in order to, in hopes to find out the origins or the quote unquote secrets of the universe. Now, how this works is that they have a gigantic underground tunnel system, like a gigantic circle, a big, big tunnel that goes in a circle underground, through which they shoot these protons and fire them at one another and smash them together. CERN is in Switzerland, actually. It is in Geneva. The whole thing is about 27 kilometers long, or the circumference of it, and they dug this 150 meters deep. For those of you who don't know nothing about CERN, CERN has also contributed to the development of the internet or the World Wide Web. It wouldn't have been possible without the contribution of CERN, just so you understand how big they are. And they are also the ones, for those of you who remember, who found the Higgs boson particle, aka the God particle, in 2012. Now, here in the picture, you see that Cern is actually on the bottom left. It is the smaller circle of 27 kilometers. The bigger circle, the Future Circular Collider, is actually a system that they want to build, which is even bigger. They want to have this built by 2070, so this is over 45 years away. But we're not concerned with that because once you hear the stats of this machine that is running right now, you're going to realize, okay, it doesn't matter if you build something bigger. This already blows everything out of proportion. It's like trying to compare dropping 1 million atomic bombs on the planet and dropping 10 million atomic bombs on the planet. At some point, it just doesn't make a difference to mortal human beings. And I'm gonna tell you some facts about CERN right now. These are officially established scientific facts, and they're gonna blow your mind. Okay, first of all, they spent over 9 billion building this whole system, so they're committed. The CERN collider is composed of plus minus 9,600 of these super magnets, which are 100,000 times more powerful than the gravitational pull of the Earth. So when they shoot these around, they use these magnets to increase the speeds so that these protons go even faster, so they can get a bigger sort of bang or smash the particles together harder. So a beam or one of those protons might rotate for up to 10 hours. In those 10 hours, within that 27-kilometer circuit, they will travel a distance of more than 10 billion kilometers. This would be as much as to make it to the end of our solar system and back again, slightly below light speed. And within a single second, okay, this proton goes around this 27-kilometer circuit. Every single second, it will go around 11,245 times. This is a speed we can't even conceive. We can't even imagine this. But it gets even crazier because once these particles, which go at these crazy, insane speeds, I mean, imagine over 11,000 times going around this 27-kilometer circle, or for those of you who are American, that's 17 miles per second, over 11,000 times. When they clash together, the heat that is generated when they do is 100,000 times hotter than the center of the sun. Now just let this sink in for a second. 100,000 times. You can't even imagine or conceive a number as big as 100,000 times. But try to imagine something 100,000 times hotter than the sun. This is, once you hear these numbers, you recognize, okay, we're not concerned about the FCC. What the hell is gonna happen right there? Because that is like wow, okay, and people aren't really talking about it, which is what's interesting. And basically, what the idea is that they have observed that all physical matter actually accounts only for 4% of the universe. Now, what they want to do at CERN is to find those elusive particles or phenomena responsible for dark matter. This is about 23%, and dark energy, this is about 73%. Essentially, what the CERN experiment hopes to achieve is to separate, by the way of the atom smasher, the invisible dark matter, which has been described as the very glue that holds together the invisible from the visible, and extract this. They wanna extract this quote unquote dark matter. And now we couldn't really say we really know what happens when we do that. I'm going to show you some quotes afterwards where people who work there talk about the dangers and what they're actually doing and what's actually happening. But we couldn't really possibly know what actually happens when we do this. And if you guys are spiritually in tune, you know that we're already at a point where science merges with the supernatural. This is just a natural result. Once you go deep enough into science, you will merge with the supernatural, that which is beyond the natural, beyond matter, right? And so this experiment is going to transcend the scientific world. This is going to become a question involving philosophy or spirituality, because what I'm going to tell you now is going to blow your mind. And I'm going to tell you now why I believe that CERN is the bottomless pit talked about Revelation. So let me show you the scripture right here. This is Revelation chapter 9, verse 1 through 11. The fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it, like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss, and out of the smoke locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. During those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them, this is the important part, they had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek is Apollyon, that is destroyer, meaning the translation of Apollyon means the destroyer. Now, we're deep into Revelation here already, and I don't want to confuse you, so here's a quick overview of the events that are taking place during Revelation, or more accurately, during the time of tribulation or the end times. Now, you don't need to remember all of this. I'm going to go in detail about every single thing here on this list. All that you remember is that this is the fifth line there, opening of the bottomless pit. This is at the fifth trumpet. So I'm going to start off with the opening of the bottomless pit. But we're going to go through everything. But just so you have a general idea what the timeline of Revelation or the end times might look like, or, well, the 7 years of tribulation, rather. But don't worry, we're going to get through all of that. You can just forget this. This is just so you kind of have an overview for now. We're jumping a little bit in the middle here of Revelation. But so let's get to the real stuff. Why do I believe, and why do many other people believe, that this is not just a scientific experiment that is harmlessly there to find the origins of the universe and to further our knowledge about our origin, but actually has a demonic undertone, or is actually in of itself built and brought forth for spiritual reasons? And I think before we go anywhere else, I'm just going to quote to you Sergio Bertolucci, the former director for research and scientific computing of Cern. He gave this interview in 2009. That was a year after the tunnels were built. The super collider could open otherworldly doors to another dimension for a very tiny lapse of time, mere fractions of a second. However, that may be just enough time to peer into this open door, either by getting something out of it or sending something into it. So, their own director for research and scientific computing said within a year after it was finished, the tunnel system was finished, or the particle accelerator was finished, that it can open doors to other dimensions. And this is not just some random statement he made. No, this is public knowledge by now. There's a bunch of articles that go in detail about this. So, for example, look here, physicists capture elusive 4D ghost in Cern particle accelerator. Now, what does this mean, ghost particle? What this means is basically a foreign entity, something that does not belong to this realm, which they are capturing using the machinery at Cern. Right here as well, scientists search for mysterious ghost particles. Now they'll call it ghost particles, they'll even call it aliens at some point, but really what it is from a biblical perspective is demonic entities. Now here we have another article by the Register that was from 2008, quoting the same interview, something may come through dimensional doors. Here as well, collider could open hole to new dimensions. So this is not something we are just randomly making up. No, their own director for research and scientific computing has given us interview and said this. So this whole idea that there is more to this than just a mere scientific experiment, but that there's actually a deep spiritual or mystical component to it, is not just coming from anywhere. Now, this in of itself should be very concerning, right? You have their own people admitting to the fact that they're opening portals. It is common knowledge that they're finding quote unquote extraterrestrial particles or foreign particles or ghost particles, whatever name you want to put onto it. And the fact that, if you remember the numbers, these things are 100,000 times hotter than the sun. Like, these are not, this is not nothing. This is something you definitely need to keep an eye on. And so that alone is already super convincing to just look at this from another lens. But it goes much deeper than that. Because if we look at where Cern is actually located, I'll show you the map right here. You have once again the big circle and then the small circle at the bottom. You can see that Cern is actually located in Saint Genis Pouilly. Not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but that's irrelevant right now. And you can see that it is exactly stationed next to Pouilly, where the entrance and also the particle accelerator or portal is, whatever you want to call it. Now, interestingly enough, the word Pouilly comes from the Latin apoliacum, and it is believed. And once again, I have to mention this because I want to be intellectually honest. I couldn't 100% verify these claims. I couldn't find any quote unquote official sources like I can give you with everything else that this was actually the case. But I think it is very interesting and relevant nonetheless. So it is believed that in Roman times a temple existed in honor of Apollo, the destroyer slash the god of destruction, and that the people who lived there at that time believed that there was a gateway to the underworld. And so the very place where Cern is located comes from the word Apolloniacum, aka Apollo, which is the same thing we saw in Revelation earlier. And they also believed, on top of that, that it was a gateway to the underworld. Now, you might just say, well, this is a coincidence. It is not 100% scientifically verifiable. If that was actually the case, sure, I'll give you that. This is not everything. Now, most scientific corporations are not really into religion. As a matter of fact, in many places in the world nowadays, you see a sort of disparity or divide between religion and scientific progress. But not at CERN. You know what is just outside of the building of CERN? The goddess, the Hindu goddess Shiva, within a stargate. We don't really know why the mascot of CERN is Shiva, a Hindu goddess, but for some reason it is. Now, isn't it interesting that Shiva is not just a goddess which has nothing to do with scientific research, supposedly, but also that Shiva is the god of destruction? Here's the Wikipedia article. Shiva is the god of destruction. Now, Shiva is also the god of renewal, but with every death comes life, with every life comes death. So, and also if you look at the top right, the first sentence is God of destruction. So, we're not sure if this is just a coincidence or why the hell a scientific experiment about the origin of the universe would have to do with Hindu gods, but for some reason, the Lord Shiva is out there within a portal gate, the god of destruction. Now, I just want to show you a really quick a video that somebody has captured at that very site.
What the f? What the?
Now, obviously, this was a ritual. The woman in this video got stabbed, and if you wanna have, if you wanna question the authenticity of the video, hey, rightfully so. This could be AI, this could be fake. Well, here's the thing. Cern confirmed that that video is real. Not only that the video is real, but that it was their own scientists who performed this. But you know what they said? They said it was a prank. It was a prank. They only pranked to perform a human sacrifice ritual right next to the statue of Shiva. They said that was just merely a prank, just some gag the scientists did for fun. Now remember, if you watched the earlier part of this video, I alluded to something, which is the way 33rd degree Masons, or in general a lot of the governing bodies work, is that they have to tell you what they're doing. Now, if this was truly real and they truly didn't want you to know it, they would just simply ignore it. They would just simply say it's AI, it's fake, it's whatever. Nobody would care. But they came out and said, no, it is real, but it was just a prank. It's the cheapest excuse you could think of. Oh, guys, it's just a prank. But you gotta ask yourself, are they really that dumb? Or are they once again following in line with what they have to do, which is they have to tell you what they're doing? Because ultimately, when we look at this whole thing, Satan also has to obey God. God can put limitations on Satan, and he does. And one of those is that Satan, as much as he deceives, there is always a level of honesty or transparency in whatever he does. And we're going to see more of this later on as we continue in the video. But when we're already talking about symbolism, I just really quick want to show you the logo of Cern. Okay, now if you paid attention in the earlier part of this video, do you need me to explain to you why this is a concerning logo, or is this just another one of those coincidences? And so once again, if we look at this verse in Revelation, we can see that they had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek is Apollyon, that is destroyer. So Apollo, the god of destruction, Shiva, the god of destruction, which is the angel of the abyss. Now, once again, these might just all be coincidences. This is possible. But if we want to look at Revelation, and if we want to at least ponder or think about whether we might actually be in prophetic times, this is something that you shouldn't just ignore. So these are some very interesting ties when it comes to the bottomless pit. I mentioned signs of the end times a little earlier, but we're gonna get deeper into that later on. Before we do that though, I just quickly wanna go over a few more things which I've just found out about Cern. Now, first of all, in 2016, there was a ceremony for the opening of a tunnel in Switzerland. It is called the Gotthard Tunnel. And they had a ceremony, and a bunch of people have drawn connections or tied this to Cern, that this was actually not just merely a opening ceremony for the tunnel, but that it is actually tied to Cern, which is also in Switzerland, and this was a sort of encrypted message or ceremony. I'm going to show you some clips right here. Now, this isn't like an official thing. These are quote unquote conspiracy theorists. But if you know anything about how these things work, is that they love to show us these things right in the open. Same as, like, for example, at the Olympics.
It now gives me the greatest pleasure to declare the 22nd Commonwealth Games open.
Just something I found worth noting, or something I found worth mentioning at the very least. Now, if this is actually the case, we don't know. But same with the Olympics, where you have a bunch of imagery, and also if we go to Revelation later on, you're gonna see that there's a lot of talk about these horsemen that come, and then you have this bizarre imagery and the horses, and it almost seems like there's gotta be something there. But once again, this is purely speculation. I've also recently read somewhere where people have made ties between the name Cern and the horn god Cernunnos. Once again, this is pure speculation, but it is interesting to note that Cernunnos is the god of the underworld. So when you think about the tunnels being underground, this might be another tie you can make, but it's a claim. That's just that. Also, they have a telescope at CERN, which is literally called Satan. So it is the Solar Axion Telescopic Antenna. And for some reason, they had to use the AN from antenna to make the word Satan. Now, I find it interesting because if some of you are aware, the Vatican has a telescope which is called Lucifer. Now, back in the day, this used to be common knowledge that the Vatican owned this, and there's even old documentaries I've found where it says that this is owned by the Vatican, and that the priests of the Vatican use these telescopes regularly, and it is also right next to the observatory of the Vatican. And obviously, if you Google this now, you will find nothing else but claims debunking this. But once again, what is a fact is that this is right next to the observatory of the Vatican, and that the priests of the Vatican use these telescopes. If it's funded by the Vatican or not, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, okay? But it's still interesting how you have these ties between science and quote unquote religion or spirituality, where you have the Vatican having a telescope right where they're stationed, called Lucifer. CERN also having a telescope called Satan. And now, what's interesting as well is that the word Lucifer, they didn't have to call it Lucifer, but it's called Large Binocular Telescope Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. And they chose to take exactly the first letters which spell out the word Lucifer. The same as with the telescope in CERN, which is called Satan. Now, once again, why is this happening? Because they have to tell you. They have to tell you what they're doing. These are just some more things I have found which are worth mentioning at the very least. I have a lot to say about the Vatican. I'm not sure how much you guys are aware of what the Vatican truly is and what they truly do there, but that's a separate video in of itself. I don't have time for it right now, and we have a lot more to get into.